My phone buzzed with another mortgage acquisition notification as I sat in my corner office, reviewing the quarterly portfolio report that would soon cross my brother's desk. As Senior Vice President of Residential Lending at First National, I'd spent 12 years quietly building one of the most successful mortgage departments in the state. But to my family, I was still just Christina, the single woman who worked some job at a bank and clearly wasn't doing well enough to afford the lifestyle they thought I should have. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my brother Kevin and his wife Jennifer flaunted their mansion, luxury cars, and designer everything, they had no idea I could buy and sell their entire neighborhood before lunch. I preferred it that way. Modesty had always been my shield against family drama, though lately, that shield was wearing thin. Jennifer's latest text thread in the family group chat was particularly grating. She'd been coordinating Christmas plans with her usual mix of passive aggression and outright condescension. Should we do a gift limit this year? I know some people might be struggling financially. We don't want anyone to feel embarrassed. Everyone knew she meant me. The unmarried sister-in-law who drove a modest Honda, lived in a small downtown condo, and never talked about money. They'd constructed an entire narrative about my supposed financial struggles based on my deliberate choice to live below my means. Christina probably can't afford much this year, Jennifer had written in a follow-up message. Maybe we should suggest a $25 limit so she doesn't feel left out. I'd watched the thread explode with family members agreeing, offering to help me if I needed it, and generally treating me like a charity case. My mother chimed in with concern about whether I was managing okay on my salary. My sister Angela offered to loan me money for gifts. Even my teenage nieces started a separate chat to discuss whether they should go easy on Aunt Christina this year. The whole thing was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. I had been handling these assumptions for years, letting them believe what they wanted while I quietly built wealth they couldn't imagine. My investment portfolio alone could fund their lifestyles for decades. The downtown condo they pitied me for. I owned the entire building. The modest car. I preferred reliability over showmanship, especially when I could afford any vehicle on the lot. But Jennifer's latest stunt had crossed a line. Last weekend, at Kevin's birthday dinner, she'd made a show of understanding my situation in front of the extended family. It's so hard being single in this economy, she'd announced, loud enough for everyone at the restaurant to hear. Christina's doing her best, but you know how expensive everything is when you're only supporting yourself on one income. The implication was clear. Poor Christina, struggling alone while Jennifer and Kevin thrived as a power couple. Never mind that Jennifer hadn't worked since marrying Kevin 5 years ago, or that their success was built on maxed-out credit cards and a mortgage that pushed their debt-to-income ratio to dangerous levels. I knew because I'd seen their file. It wasn't intentional snooping. Kevin had applied for a home equity loan through our bank 6 months ago, and his application had been randomly assigned to my department for review. Standard protocol required me to recuse myself due to the family relationship, but not before I'd seen enough to understand their true financial picture. They were drowning. The house, the cars, Jennifer's shopping habits, it was all funded by debt. Their equity was virtually non-existent. Their savings account barely covered a month of expenses, and they were 3 payments behind on Jennifer's BMW. The home equity application had been their desperate attempt to consolidate debt before it all collapsed. Of course, they'd been denied. Their debt-to-income ratio was already at 47%, well above our guidelines. But Kevin had never mentioned the rejection to the family, allowing them to continue believing in the illusion of his success. Now, as Christmas approached, Jennifer had decided to make my supposed poverty the family's holiday entertainment. The gift exchange at my parents' house was shaping up to be her grand performance, where she'd play the generous sister-in-law, graciously accommodating poor Christina's limited budget. I scrolled through the family chat again, watching them plan around my imagined financial constraints. My father suggested lowering the gift limit even further. My mother wondered if she should slip Christina some extra money for shopping. Angela offered to take me to the outlet mall for deals. They meant well, but their assumptions stung more than I cared to admit. Not because I was ashamed of my financial situation. I was incredibly proud of what I'd built. But because after 12 years of professional success, my own family still saw me as someone who needed their pity. Maybe it was time to change that narrative. I pulled up the mortgage database and typed in their address. The Flemington property had been flagged for potential foreclosure proceedings within 90 days. Their primary lender, Coastal Banking Group, had already begun the preliminary paperwork. In the industry, we called it circling the drain. That point, where borrowers were technically still making payments, but everyone could see the inevitable end approaching. Coastal was one of several smaller banks that regularly sold distressed mortgages to larger institutions like ours. It was a standard practice that helped them minimize losses while giving us opportunities to work with borrowers on more favorable terms. Sometimes we could save homes that other banks had given up on. Sometimes we could do other things entirely. I opened a new email to Patricia Morris, our acquisitions director, and began typing. Patricia, I'd like to discuss a potential mortgage purchase in the Flemington development. Priority timeline preferred. Please prepare the standard package for a cash acquisition within 30 days. I attached Kevin and Jennifer's property details and hit send. 30 minutes later, Patricia called. Christina, this is an interesting property. Small outstanding balance relative to the current market value, but the borrowers are clearly in distress. Coastal will probably take 60 cents on the dollar to move it quickly. Are we looking at this for the investment portfolio? Personal acquisition, I said simply. I'll fund it directly, outside of bank business. Patricia paused. In 12 years of working together, I'd never made a personal real estate request. Of course, I'll reach out to Coastal this afternoon. Should be straightforward. One more thing, I added. I prefer this to remain confidential until after the holidays. Understood. I'll handle it personally. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of holiday preparations and banking business. True to her word, Patricia moved quickly on the acquisition. Coastal was eager to clear the distressed asset from their books, especially when we offered a cash purchase that would close before their quarterly reporting deadline. By December 20th, I'd owned my brother's house. The paperwork was beautifully straightforward. Kevin and Jennifer's mortgage had been transferred to me personally, making me their new lender. They'd receive notification after the holidays, along with information about their new payment arrangements. Nothing about their loan terms would change immediately. I wasn't interested in disrupting their Christmas with foreclosure threats. I was interested in something much more satisfying. The family gift exchange was scheduled for Christmas Eve at my parents' house. Traditional timing, traditional format. We'd draw names from a hat, exchange presents, and Jennifer would undoubtedly find some way to highlight my supposed financial struggles in front of everyone. Except this year, I'd be ready. I spent considerable time choosing Jennifer's gift. It needed to be perfect, something that would make my point without being unnecessarily cruel. After all, Kevin was still my brother, and despite their financial irresponsibility, I didn't want to destroy their Christmas entirely. I settled on an elegant envelope with the mortgage deed inside, along with a brief letter explaining the situation. Professional, direct, and absolutely devastating. Christmas Eve arrived with the usual chaos of family gatherings. My parents' house was decorated with their typical enthusiasm, lights on every surface, mistletoe hanging from doorways, and the massive tree that had been Dad's pride for 30 years. The whole family was there. Kevin and Jennifer, my sister Angela, and her husband, my 2 teenage nieces, and my parents playing host to the crowd they'd loved having around them for decades. I arrived at 6, carrying a bottle of wine and the carefully prepared envelope that would change everything. Christina. Jennifer swept toward me with exaggerated warmth, air kissing both cheeks like we were at a charity gala. You look wonderful. That coat is so classic. Classic was Jennifer's speak for probably from 3 seasons ago, but I smiled and thanked her anyway. I love what you've done with your hair, she continued, examining my simple ponytail with a fake enthusiasm of someone making conversation with a distant relative. So practical for work. Kevin appeared with drinks, looking slightly uncomfortable. He'd always been better at reading family dynamics than his wife, and something in my expression must have warned him that tonight felt different. Good to see you, sis, he said, handing me a glass of wine. How's work treating you? Very well, I replied. Busy season. You know how it is in banking. Jennifer laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Oh, banking. So steady. So secure. Kevin always says you're so smart to choose stability over those risky careers. I nodded thoughtfully. Stability has its benefits. The evening progressed through dinner, conversation, and the usual family dynamics. Jennifer held court with stories about their recent vacation to Cabo, their plans to remodel the kitchen, and Kevin's potential promotion that would finally allow them to get the boat they'd been wanting. Every story was calculated to emphasize their success, and by contrast, my obvious lack thereof. She mentioned their new country club membership, the private school they were considering for future children, and the investment property they might buy in Florida. All funded by debt they couldn't afford, but the family didn't need to know that. Finally, after dessert, Mom announced it was time for gifts. We gathered in the living room, arranged in the same circle we'd used since childhood. The pile of presents in the center looked impressive, though I knew Jennifer had specifically orchestrated the display to maximize visual impact. Before we start, Jennifer announced, standing up with the authority of someone calling a board meeting, I want to say something. Here it comes, I thought. Family is about more than money, she began, looking directly at me with theatrical compassion. It's about love and support, and being there for each other no matter what our circumstances might be. My mother smiled approvingly. Angela nodded along. Even my nieces looked touched by the sentiment. Some of us are more fortunate than others, Jennifer continued, her voice taking on the tone of a charity spokesperson. Some of us have been blessed with financial success, while others are still finding their way. The room was completely silent now, everyone understanding exactly who she meant. So this year, I think we should all remember that the best gifts come from the heart, not from the wallet. Christina, I want you to know that we love you just as much whether your presents cost $5 or $500. We don't judge anyone based on what they can afford. The condescension was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. My teenage nieces looked mortified on my behalf. Kevin was studying his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Even my father shifted uncomfortably in his recliner. Jennifer basked in the attention, clearly pleased with her performance. Now let's exchange gifts with grateful hearts. We drew names from Mom's antique ceramic bowl. I watched Jennifer pull Kevin's name with obvious delight. She'd undoubtedly bought him something expensive that would reinforce their image of prosperity. I drew Angela's name, which was perfect. I'd bought her a beautiful cashmere scarf that cost more than Jennifer probably spent on groceries in a month. The gift exchange began with my nieces, who gave each other handmade jewelry and gift cards with the earnest enthusiasm of teenagers who still believed Christmas magic was real. Angela and her husband exchanged practical gifts, A new briefcase for him, spa vouchers for her. Kevin presented Jennifer with a diamond tennis bracelet that probably cost 3 months of their mortgage payments. She squealed with delight, holding it up for everyone to admire while making sure they all noticed the size of the stones. "Kevin, you spoil me," she announced, loud enough to ensure everyone heard the implied contrast with my expected offering. When it was my turn to give Angela her gift, I handed over the elegantly wrapped scarf box. She opened it with genuine surprise and delight. "Christina, this is gorgeous. The quality is incredible. This must have cost a fortune." Jennifer's smile flickered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "How thoughtful. Christina has such good taste, even when she's being careful with her budget." Finally, it was Jennifer's turn to give me her gift. She presented a small box with a bow, her expression radiating the magnanimous joy of someone performing an act of charity. "I hope you love it," she said sweetly. "I thought about you the moment I saw it." Inside was a cheap bracelet from a discount jewelry store, the kind of thing that would turn my wrist green within a week. The price tag was still attached, $12.99. "It's lovely," I said, and meant it. The bracelet itself wasn't important. What mattered was the message. Jennifer had spent $13 on my gift while talking about not judging people based on what they could afford. "Your turn, Christina," Mom announced, clearly trying to move past the awkward moment. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared. It was cream-colored paper, heady stock, with Jennifer's name written in elegant calligraphy. "Here you go," I said, handing it to her with a smile. "I thought about you the moment I arranged it." Jennifer took the envelope with curiosity, probably expecting a gift card or maybe a heartfelt letter about sisterly love. The whole family watched as she carefully opened the flap. Her expression changed the moment she saw the first document. The color drained from her face as she pulled out the mortgage deed, her hands beginning to tremble as she read her own address at the top of the page. What is this?" she whispered. I maintained my smile, keeping my voice gentle and conversational. "It's exactly what you said. I couldn't afford much this year. $13 million was really stretching my budget, but I managed." The room went dead silent. Angela's mouth fell open. Kevin looked like he'd been hit by lightning. My parents stared in confusion, clearly not understanding what they were seeing. Jennifer's voice cracked as she read further down the document. This says you own our house." "That's right," I confirmed pleasantly. "Coastal Banking was looking to sell your mortgage, and I thought it would make a meaningful Christmas gift. You're absolutely correct that the best gifts come from the heart." Kevin finally found his voice. "Christina, what are you talking about? We have a mortgage with Coastal Banking." "Had," I corrected gently. "Past tense. As of December 20th, your mortgage was transferred to me personally. You'll receive the official notification in a few days, along with information about your new payment arrangements." Jennifer was staring at the deed like it was written in a foreign language. "But how did you? You work at a bank. You can't afford." "I'm Senior Vice President of Residential Lending at First National," I said, my voice still calm and pleasant. "I've been there for 12 years. My department handles about 40% of the state's mortgage acquisitions." The silence in the room was deafening. Mom was clutching Dad's arm. Angela looked like she was watching a movie and couldn't follow the plot. Jennifer's face had gone from pale to red as the implications sank in. "You bought our house? Our actual house?" "Well, technically, I bought your mortgage from the bank. You still own the house. You just make your payments to me now, instead of Coastal. Nothing changes in terms of your monthly obligations." Kevin was reading over Jennifer's shoulder, his expression growing more horrified by the second. Christina, why would you do this? I looked around the room at my family, all of them staring at me like I'd suddenly grown a second head. Because I was tired of being treated like a charity case. I said simply, for years, you've all assumed I was struggling financially because I don't flaunt my success. Jennifer just spent 5 minutes lecturing everyone about not judging people based on money, right after spending the last month in family group chats discussing how poor I am and how we should all accommodate my limited budget. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The truth is, I continued, I've been financially stable for years. I could have corrected your assumptions at any time, but I preferred privacy over performance. Unfortunately, that privacy seems to have been interpreted as poverty. Angela found her voice first. Christina, how much money do you make? Enough, I replied. My salary last year was in the mid-6 figures, plus bonuses and investment income. The downtown condo you all pity me for. I own the entire building. It generates about $30,000 a month in rental income. Dad was shaking his head slowly. But you drive that old Honda. Because it's reliable, fuel efficient, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone with my choice of vehicle. I could buy any car on the lot tomorrow, but I prefer function over flash. Jennifer was still staring at the mortgage deed, her voice barely a whisper. You have $13 million? That's just what I spent on your mortgage. It represents about 8% of my liquid assets. The number hit the room like a physical force. Mom actually gasped. Kevin sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Jennifer looked up at me with something between fury and panic. But if you own our mortgage, that means you make your payments to me now, I confirmed. Same amount, same terms, same schedule. The only thing that changes is where you send the check each month. Kevin was running his hands through his hair, clearly trying to process the situation. Jesus, Christina. We had no idea. I know you didn't. That was intentional on my part. I prefer keeping my financial situation private rather than turning family gatherings into discussions about money. Jennifer's voice was getting shrill. But you let us think you were poor. You let us plan the whole gift exchange around your supposed budget problems. I let you assume what you wanted to assume, I corrected. I never asked for anyone to lower gift limits or accommodate my imagined financial struggles. Those were conclusions you drew based on your own perceptions. Angela was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Why didn't you ever tell us? Because I didn't want our relationships to change based on money. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have. Unfortunately, the absence of obvious wealth seems to have been interpreted as a character flaw rather than a personal choice. Jennifer was reading through the papers again, clearly looking for some kind of escape clause. This can't be legal. You can't just buy someone's house without telling them. It's completely legal, I assured her. Mortgage transfers happen thousands of times a day in this country. Banks sell mortgages to other financial institutions routinely. The only unusual aspect of this transaction is that the buyer is a family member. Kevin looked up at me with something that might have been respect. The home equity loan we applied for. You saw our application, didn't you? I nodded. It was randomly assigned to my department. I recused myself immediately due to the family relationship, but not before I saw enough to understand your financial situation. Jennifer's face went ashen. What financial situation? Kevin sighed heavily. We were denied for the equity loan, Jen. Our debt-to-income ratio is too high. But I said we were exploring options. I never said we were approved. The family was watching this exchange like spectators at a tennis match, clearly trying to understand the dynamics they'd been oblivious to. Jennifer turned back to me, her voice desperate now. So what happens next? Are you going to foreclose on us? Raise our payments? Kick us out? Nothing happens, I said calmly. You continue making your payments exactly as you have been. The money goes to me instead of Coastal Banking, but your obligations don't change. But why would you do this if you're not going to change anything? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening. Because I wanted to give you something meaningful for Christmas. You've spent months worried about my supposed poverty, so I thought I'd share a little financial security with you. Jennifer stared at me blankly. Think about it, I continued. Coastal Banking was preparing foreclosure proceedings. Your mortgage was in distress, and they wanted it off their books. If I hadn't purchased it, you would have been facing much more serious problems in the new year. Kevin's head snapped up. Foreclosure proceedings? Preliminary stages? I confirmed. You're technically current on payments, but your overall financial profile made them nervous. Buying your mortgage removed that pressure. The room fell silent again as everyone processed this information. Jennifer was the first to speak, her voice small and confused. So you saved our house? I secured your housing situation, I said diplomatically. Considered a gift to the family. Angela spoke up tentatively. Christina, I think I speak for everyone when I say we owe you an apology. I shook my head. You don't owe me anything. But maybe next time, don't assume someone's financial situation based on their lifestyle choices. Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Honey, we're so sorry. We had no idea. I know you didn't, Mom. And I'm not angry about the assumptions. I'm just tired of being treated like I need charity when I've been doing fine on my own. Dad cleared his throat, clearly struggling with the revelation. Christina, this is incredible. We're proud of you, sweetheart. We just wish we'd known. Now you do, I said simply. Jennifer was still holding the mortgage deed, staring at it like it might disappear if she looked away. I don't understand how you did this so quickly. Bank acquisitions can move very fast when all parties are motivated, I explained. Coastal wanted to clear the asset. I had the capital available, and everyone benefited from a quick closing. Kevin looked at me with newfound respect. You really could have let us lose the house. Yes, but you're my brother. Despite our differences, I don't want to see your family homeless. Jennifer's voice was barely audible. All those things I said about you not being able to afford gifts were based on assumptions. I finished gently. Next time, maybe ask instead of assuming. The evening wound down after that, with family members approaching me individually to apologize for their misconceptions and ask questions about my career that they'd never bothered to ask before. My nieces were fascinated by the idea that their struggling aunt was actually wealthy, while my parents seemed torn between pride and embarrassment. As people prepared to leave, Jennifer approached me privately. Christina, I owe you a huge apology. I was horrible tonight, and apparently I've been horrible for months without realizing it. I studied her face, looking for sincerity beneath the shock. Thank you for saying that. I never imagined you were doing so well. You're so quiet about everything. I prefer privacy, I said, but maybe I was too private if it led to these kinds of misunderstandings. Jennifer nodded, still clutching the mortgage papers. What do we do now? How do we make payments to you? I'll have my office send you the updated payment information after the holidays. Nothing changes except the address where you send the check. She hesitated, then asked quietly, Are you going to tell everyone what you saw in our financial records? I shook my head. Your business is your business, Jennifer. I'm not interested in embarrassing you further. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. As the family dispersed into the cold December night, I found myself feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of their assumptions was finally gone, replaced by something that felt like genuine respect for the first time in years. Kevin caught up with me in the driveway as I was getting into my car. "Christina, wait." I rolled down the window. "What's up?" "Thank you," he said simply, "for saving our house and for not humiliating us in front of everyone about our financial problems." "You're welcome." He paused, then added, "I think Jennifer learned something important tonight about making assumptions." I smiled. We all did. 3 months later, Jennifer and Kevin's payments arrived promptly on the first of each month, always accompanied by a brief note thanking me for the opportunity to maintain their home. Jennifer had stopped making comments about anyone's financial situation at family gatherings, and had even started asking genuine questions about my work and investments. The mortgage acquisition had cost me exactly what I'd told them, $13 million. But the return on investment was immeasurable. For the first time in years, my family saw me as I actually was. A successful professional who had chosen discretion over display, privacy over performance. And every month, when their payment arrived, I was reminded that sometimes the best gifts really do come from the heart, especially when they're wrapped in mortgage deeds and delivered with perfect timing.